we've been pretending that we trust Harden in the playoffs for a decade. And this has always been like we've come to terms. Kirk Cousins probably has 4 or 5 more good years, but we've bailed on him. We do that in football. You're not a big game player. Andy Dalton got that reputation very early. In the NBA, because so much of the league is optics and aesthetics, if we like your style, we keep believing you'll deliver for us. It's like Westbrook's not a playoff guy. Harden's not a playoff guy. And that style of play, which is, Harden never took great care of himself. You age really fast, right? Mm-hmm. There's a reason LeBron's still great. Brady at the end was still great. Kobe last game could be great. Your body treats you like you treat your body. So Harden, he was a nightclub guy. That's fine with me. But what happens at the end of years, this sport, which is incredibly taxing, there's just too many games. It's always been too taxing. That's why old NBA players in their 50s are all crouched over. The sport just
I feel like that now, Colin.
The sport beats the hell out of you. So there should be about 65, 68 games. And that's why load management, the analytics are now acknowledging these guys are playing too many games. It's not an excuse. It's the truth. So, Harden is aged very quickly, but also on a micro level within seasons, he ages very quickly. He doesn't have a lot left, and that was in his prime. So, he can be, and I said this about a month ago. I said he's really now kind of a role player. And what do role players do? Like Jordan Poole. Great night, bad night. Good night, bad night. Great night, bad night, bad night. That's a role player. AD, Steph, LeBron may pull back, but you don't get horrendous performances. You do from a role player. And that's what Harden is. So I think it's time to move on from James Harden. I love Maxey. Embiid's there for the long term. Tobias Harris is fine. PJ Tucker is what he is. But I think, in a way, I'm relieved. We don't have to keep pretending we know what Harden is in big spots. Right? It doesn't work. And Tatum also had his best game maybe as a pro. I mean, he that first half was like, wow. It was MJ-ish. It was like Kobe at his best. And let's not have recency bias. Every Celtic fan today was praying that Tatum showed up. So let's not pretend like that hasn't been an ongoing discussion. So, but I was happy for him. He's a great player, and his confidence kind of wavers at times, but that move he made at the end of the first half, when he moved to his left, it was like, okay, that's like, if he ever has an 8-second piece of video that defines him, it's like, that's a good one.
Tatum, I gained so much respect for him in this series because of how poorly things were going for him and his stick-to-itiveness during it all. For how poorly he played to start Game 6, to suddenly have those shots fall at the end of the game. And you could just tell it was like the weight of the world got lifted off of his shoulders. And I directly think that led to him playing with as much confidence as he did today. He's had a nightmare pull-up jump shooting season. He shot 29% on pull-up threes during the regular season. It's been a huge problem for him. And to see that skill kind of come to fruition on the stage, I talked about this after Game 6, but basketball can be such a mentally challenging sport because jump shooting in particular, when you're practicing it, like I have no doubt that if Tatum is doing a shooting drill, he's hitting 75% of those shots. And then you get in a game and you're like, man, I'm 1 for 14. I've paid my dues. I've done all the work and these shots just aren't falling. And he just had the fortitude to stick with it, and he kept going. I thought he exposed Joel Embiid as a one-dimensional defender in this game with his ability to pull him out in switches and kill him on the perimeter. But by the way, something to gain appreciation for Anthony Davis. Like, Embiid is considered a much better defender than Jokic, but he was a liability in this game because of his inability to defend on the perimeter. Exactly. Whereas Anthony Davis, it's like, I'm switching on to Steph freaking Curry with the game on the line and getting back-to-back stops. As far as the Sixers go, I want to try to focus more on Embiid because I look at Harden as a supporting star. He helps run your offense. He helps get guys into their spots. He straight up stole 2 games in this series. I would argue you got more out of Harden than you could have hoped to get in this type of
question.
setting.
I mean, that game the other night was his best game in the playoffs in 8 years. That was a complete outlier for almost a decade.
Exactly. And he had another one earlier in the series without Embiid. I focus on Embiid. This is actually a crazy stat, Colin. Joel Embiid averaged 5 made field goals in the paint per game in this series. Nikola Jokic against the Suns averaged 11 made field goals in the paint. That to me is the weak point in Joel Embiid's career skill set right now. He loves to hover around the free throw line and take jump shots. Even in those post-up situations, he'd get Al Horford back down 5 feet from the rim. Jokic is hitting you with that shoulder and going up with a hook shot that he's going to make 70% of the time. Embiid, fall away and maybe fall on the ground and try to draw a foul. Like he's taking a fadeaway jump shot instead of going up strong. That to me is the next step for Embiid. It's funny. We look at this series and we look at the Sixers moving forward. And to me, it's like, the roster is great. They defended a lot better than I expected them to. Their supporting star did a lot. Tyrese Maxey had big moments. Tobias Harris, I thought, did fine. Your best player was not good enough. And he simply has to be better. And that's really the only offseason adjustment Philly needs to make is Joel Embiid needs to craft his game in a way that thrives in the physicality of this setting. And he's just yet to do so.
Yeah, and when, Embiid also, to your point, and Harden's always been like this, they can really kill ball movement. And, Jokic, you give him the ball, he has 2 or 3 set moves, and he goes right to him. Embiid is a little more artist. He ponders. He puts the ball on the floor. And what happens is when Harden and Embiid are both cold, they don't move the ball. Everybody else just watches 2 cold shooters. Whereas if Jokic is off, he's a great passer. He makes his mind up very quickly in most instances what to do with the ball. I've said this before, that more choices can often create more confusion. I mean, Jordan had like 3 stock moves, right? Whereas sometimes, Kobe could be a bit more artist. He didn't have as many stock moves. And sometimes there were complaints that Kobe basically, you were all staring at Kobe, right? You're just waiting for Kobe to do his thing. And so I think with Embiid, one of the things that's always bothered me about his game is it can be ponderous. And by the way, he puts the ball on the floor. Also, sometimes, it's high school basketball. If you're a big guy, don't put the ball on the floor. Little guys can come and swat it. We saw that twice today. So I know he's great, but at times I feel like he's disruptive to the flow. I never feel that with Anthony Davis. You give Anthony the ball low, he's going to shoot it. Now, he may square you up and turn to the basket, but he will attack. Jokic attacks. Embiid ponders too much. And maybe if you put a stop clock, that's a confirmation bias to me because I've never loved his game. But there are times I watched him in this series and I'm like, get him off the floor. Let the young guys move the ball, especially when they got down. But, he's MVP, so I lose the argument.
There's a rhythm and flow to basketball. Anybody who's played at any level, even if you haven't played at any competitive level, you just play in your men's league or pick up around town, there's a rhythm and flow to basketball. And like I was always blown away by how many people, Warriors fans in particular, were like, hey, we got such great looks in game 6. I can't believe we were missing them. And I'm like, yeah, but that wasn't Warriors basketball. Warriors basketball was a motion offense where the ball's popping around and everyone's involved. And the Lakers made you go straight up high pick and roll with Steph Curry. And now guys are standing around a lot. And when they're standing around a lot, then they catch and shoot. It's a totally different type of shot than when there's a rhythm and flow to the offense. And there's no doubt that stagnation, which is what I call anytime a player just holds on, ponders and stares around for a while. But yeah, that's the thing. Like Embiid has to start, and he said this in his presser when he got the MVP. He's like, it's now my goal is championships. That's great. So that means the next step for you is identify the things that are causing you problems in the postseason. You're not getting the same whistle that you normally get. A lot of these tough fall away 15-footers and shots that you take don't fall at as high a percentage as they do in the regular season. You need to learn to play bully ball. You are the biggest dude on this floor. You should be getting 10 to 12 short push shots and hook shots in every single game that you can make 70% of. That's the next step for him, is he's got to build out the playoff bully ball skill set.
Yeah. Listen, we watched Boston pick the Sixers and the Bucks apart this year. We really did. Mm-hmm. So I'm interested to watch the Miami series, but I went with Milwaukee, and during the season, I think we said this multiple times, they have to reboot this roster. It's gotten old and slow really fast. Well, it got old and slow against Miami. But I think if you look at Boston, if you look at the history of the NBA, it's baby steps. So the Celtics get to the finals and lose. after watching them today, it's like, okay, is this the natural progression that they get back to the conference or the finals, and now they face a Laker or a Denver team? Lakers don't quite have the depth of athletes in their prime. Denver hasn't been in that spot. Maybe Denver now loses in the finals, then comes back next year. But when you watch the Celtics today, I did feel like, okay, this team with Tatum delivering like this, all right, this is the best team in basketball. That's what it felt like to me.
It's all Tatum. Like, I mean, I have thought this has been the most talented roster in the NBA the last 2 years. And I thought they got even more talented this summer, adding Malcolm Brogdon, just with all of the players on the roster getting a little bit better incrementally as they grow. But it's the bottom line was they had a star last year that kind of shrunk under the pressure against Steph Curry. And so if Jayson Tatum plays at or near this level, they're going to win the title because they'll have a bona fide superstar at the helm, a reliable second star, and all of the talent that you need. It's just, that's the question is, let's say that they beat Miami, and I believe they will. Eric Spoelstra is going to give them hell. He's going to ball pressure the hell out of those wings to make them uncomfortable because they're not great ball handlers. He's going to try to funnel them into Bam Adebayo. He's going to try to stagnate them with switching. He's going to do all these different things, and it will be a long, grueling series. Probably will still go 6 games just because that's what Eric Spoelstra does, but they don't have the talent, I don't think, to beat this Boston team. But let's say it's the NBA Finals now, and it's LeBron James and Anthony Davis rolling into town, another monster NBA personality. Is Jayson Tatum going to be able to stand on that court and feel confident as the guy? And for the record, the Lakers gave the Celtics 2 really good fights this year and straight up got robbed in one of them. So that you've seen them play down to their competition. Those games were before the trade deadline too. That's before they made the roster changes. So I again, that's the thing. It's going to be, can Tatum maintain that moxie that you expect from a bona fide superstar at that level? And again, either way, it's going to be Jokic or it's going to be LeBron. It's going to be somebody like that.
How great have the NBA playoffs been so far? If you live in one of those cities and wanted to go to the games, there is only one place to get tickets: the Game Time app, the fastest growing ticketing app in the U.S. For last minute, amazing deals. They don't stop with the NBA. They do baseball, hockey, concerts, comedy shows too. Download the Game Time app and use the code Colin, COLIN. Get $20 off your first purchase. $20 off first purchase. Terms apply. Again, download the Game Time app. Use the code Colin, COLIN. Last minute tickets, lowest prices, guaranteed. The Game Time app, the fastest growing sports app in the United States. Use the code Colin, COLIN. Yeah, I mean, listen, I'm happy that Tatum did what he did, but this had been what every Celtic fan woke up this morning, and their number one concern was, we're better than them. What Tatum's going to show up? And it was the best version of him. So I got to throw something at you. So I have said this. I predicted that the Lakers would beat Minnesota in the play-in game, and they would beat Memphis quickly. I thought they would lose to Golden State in about 5 or 6. I just didn't think they had the shooting, and the way the series worked out, 1 game rest between each game, I thought worked against the Lakers. Well, it didn't. So I was driving today, and I'll meet these people in Los Angeles having coffee. They're like, "Do you finally believe in them?" And I came to a conclusion today. Like, why? It's not like I hated the Lakers. I've just said I don't think they're a championship team, which, by the way, they're not yet. And I said about the Warriors, they're not a championship team. I had Milwaukee and Phoenix in it with Milwaukee winning. But I thought about this. My opinion of LeBron this year has not been as accurate as the production of LeBron. So I've been saying on the air, there's never been a championship team where the best player, AD, is great offensively every other game. And the second best player really doesn't have great games. He has great spurts. That's like a win a playoff series team. But if you go back and look at LeBron from play-in game to Golden State, play-in game Memphis Golden State, and you just don't know who it is, and you just give me the numbers of LeBron. What I've been doing is comparing LeBron to LeBron's prime. But if you took the name off and said, here's what this player gives you, you're like, oh, he's a more efficient Jamal Murray. And then I could argue, different games, obviously. Then I could argue, oh, they have the best player left and a bona fide all-star. I mean, LeBron did make second team All-NBA, right?
Third team, yeah.
Third team, my bad. So, and by the way, would have made second had he played more. He just didn't play any games. So, and I was driving today. I was driving down, and I was thinking, why can't I get this team? What the hell? And I'm like, oh, wait, time out. You keep comparing LeBron to prime LeBron. If you compare LeBron to all the other players left, you're like, yeah, he's really good. He's an all-star. So I do look at them, and I probably think they're going to match up really well with Denver. And my guess is LA ends up against Boston in the finals. That's my guess today.
Yeah, I'm picking LA over Denver, probably in 6 games, just because that's the similar cadence that they go with. Again, with the LeBron thing, he really is trying to conserve as much energy as possible. I don't think it's a coincidence that the 2 best moments he's had in this postseason so far are Game 4 against Memphis, down by 1. He's playing like shit, and he's like, you know what? I just gotta go to the rim. And he was able to. And you know what? He finished over the defensive player of the year. Then to start overtime, he beat the defensive player of the year off the dribble and made a layup on him. And then he beat a second-team all-defense perimeter defender to the basket, Dylan Brooks, for an and-one layup in his 2020 game. And looking back, that salvaged that series in a lot of ways, because they would have gone back to Memphis 2-2, totally different series if LeBron doesn't salvage that one. And then in Game 6, like, that was, I don't think people realize, like, that was MVP level performance from LeBron in that Game 6. Like, he was unbelievable defensively, unbelievable on the glass, controlled the offense out of the post and out of high pick and roll, picking on Steph Curry. It was vintage LeBron. And so to me, what that told me was like, okay, he knows he has that in the bag. What he's going to do is he's going to hold that back and only use it when it's absolutely necessary, just from the standpoint of the energy level. And as far as the roster goes, and I know that there's not a dependable offensive player on the roster. That's true. LeBron's coasting a lot. Anthony Davis is up and down offensively. Each of these role players are it's like one night they're great, one night they're not. But there's so many of them that can go off. And Darvin Ham is so good at recognizing which player is in that groove and leaning on him with more minutes, just like Lonnie Walker in that 4th quarter of Game 4, where it's like tonight it's Austin Reeves. The next day, it's D'Angelo Russell. Oh, today, Rui Hachimura's got it going. We're going to feed him. He's got 24. Oh, today's LeBron's game. He's got it going. They've got such a depth of players that can convert things offensively. And as I look at the Denver matchup, to me, it's 100% about Anthony Davis versus Nikola Jokic and his ability to bother him defensively. Because think of it like this. If I go down the roster, is LeBron better than Jamal Murray? Hell yeah, even this version of him. Austin Reeves, every bit as good, if not better, than a guy like Michael Porter Jr. or Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, D'Angelo Russell. Like, they actually down the roster are better. Just Jokic could theoretically be the best player in the series. And so everything to me comes down to Anthony Davis and his ability to bother Nikola Jokic. If he does that, I think the Lakers have enough. And this is a key basketball concept that is going to dominate this particular series. Every team the Lakers have played so far has been able to switch the LeBron James, Anthony Davis pick and roll, because Dylan Brooks and Jaren Jackson can both guard the other. So they'll just switch it. You have Andrew Wiggins and Draymond Green. They can just switch it. They're not going to switch Nikola Jokic onto LeBron. So basically, you're going to have LeBron dominating this series in high pick and roll against Nikola Jokic. And that's where LeBron can use his brain more, because he's going to automatically get dribble penetration coming over the top of those screens since they're not switching it. So it's going to be all about LeBron on the offensive end in this series and all about Anthony Davis. Can he stay out of foul trouble, and can he contain Nikola Jokic?
Yeah, this is the longest stretch for Anthony Davis playing well. Now, there was the bubble year when he had that sabbatical, but this is really the longest sustained stretch. God, even pre-Lakers. There was a couple of years before he came to the Lakers where he had injuries. So you cross your fingers a little. But I will say that I remember when the rumor started that Anthony Davis was going to be a Laker, and there was for about an hour a rumor he was going to be a Clipper. It was very brief. Rich Paul, the guys. I don't think Rich Paul wanted to make it look so obvious that he was going to join LeBron. So there was like this, oh, the Clippers are in it. And I remember a source inside the Clippers saying they just didn't think he would consistently play through pain. And big guys have unique bodies, and you got to play hurt. And that was always the knock on him. I don't think he's 100% now. I think he's playing hurt. And I think I'll throw this at you. When LeBron set the scoring record this year, and there was that video where Anthony Davis like didn't get off the bench, and I do think there was a little bit of feelings hurt, and it was a little territorial, like, is this my team or this? But I do think LeBron and his camp, after the record was set, I think they made a real effort to say, hey, man, that was just a record. Like this is your team. And I think LeBron and his guys deserve credit for really empowering Anthony Davis, because let's be honest, all we talked about for about 3 weeks was LeBron breaking Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's record. And, after a while, that would wear on anybody. If you're
they're losing. While they're losing games. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I think LeBron and his camp were very sensitive when there were some reports that I know, because people reached out to me, like they didn't like that narrative. And they've massaged it, and they've really empowered AD. And you're seeing now college AD, first 3 years in New Orleans AD, bubble AD. And I don't think there's any question. He's the best defensive player left. And I thought not Steph Curry, but AD essentially controlled that whole series. Everything the Warriors did, both ends, was based on where's AD. He totally controlled the series. Even on nights when he wasn't great offensively, he still controlled it.
Yeah, you hit this hard all week, and I'm so glad you did, because it's recognition that Anthony Davis deserves. Every adjustment in the series was built around the Warriors trying to get Anthony Davis away from the paint and the Lakers trying to get Anthony Davis back into the paint. There's no question to me that he was the best player in the series. I mean, the reality is they held to Steph to his least efficient scoring postseason series since the Rockets in 2019. That's Anthony Davis. This is another crazy stat for you, LeBron. And this is this stat for you, Colin. This is the biggest reason why I believe in this Lakers team and their ability to win a championship. They throw hellacious defensive punches. Now, they can coast a lot, and they usually wait to use it until they need it. I think it's a big part of why their series have followed identical cadences, because they just have these specific games like game 3, where it's like, we're going to just throw the kitchen sink defensively. Game 1, game 6, that kind of thing. In clutch situations, so when the score is within 5 points with less than 5 minutes left, the Lakers are holding teams in this postseason run to 74.4 points per 100 possessions, and they are undefeated, 5-0 in games this postseason with clutch situations. None of the remaining teams have a defensive rating below 100 in clutch situations in this postseason run. So the Lakers' defensive punch, in large part because of Anthony Davis, is just so much more powerful than any of these other teams and what they can throw. And so if they get enough offensively out of this group, they're just the better two-way team than any of these guys, in my opinion.
Yeah, I find myself, and this is not a shot at Jokic because I thought he deserved the MVP, but I do want to see a Laker-Celtic final. I went skiing on a Saturday with a friend. It was a great ski day, and we came home that night, and the Celtics played the Lakers. It was on ABC. It was a Saturday night, network game. It was a great game in Boston. Great game. And I remember sitting with a friend, and I'm like, I can't figure this team out. They'd beaten Milwaukee at Milwaukee like a month earlier. I'm like, God, this team's a mess. And I'm like, then they play Milwaukee and Boston. I'm like, I think they're better. So I've struggled to get a beat on them all year. But I will say this, because I was thinking driving in the car today, let's step ahead if they face Boston. So the best player would be Anthony Davis or Tatum. The second best player would be Jaylen Brown or LeBron. And then you'd get to, and you could criticize the Lakers for like D'Angelo Russell is inconsistent, but he's a better offensive player than their third best player, Marcus Smart. And then you could say, well, Austin Reeves is undrafted, but I'd argue he's a more reliable player than their fourth best offensive player, Malcolm Brogdon. Well, you could say, well, your Jared Vanderbilt gives you nothing offensively. Either does Robert Williams. And then you get into the Rui, and then you start looking around at those peripheral players, Derek White and Rui, and it's going to be a series where those role players, role players play well, Jason, at home. My guess is we're not at 6. We go to a game 7, And then does LeBron go Superman? Does he put the cape on? But I went back and forth in the car today, Boston Lakers, and I'm like, it's pretty even. And the difference is, I think Darvin Ham's had a better year coaching. I think he has a better feel for his team than Mazzulla does at this point. To this point. And again, let's not go confirmation bias. Three games ago, we didn't know what the hell was going on with Tatum or his coach. So, right, like today, we think it's all solved. But I think Boston Lakers, I've just come to terms with LeBron still has the ability to put the cape on.
Yep.
Brady, even his last year, he could put the cape on. So if you and I'm warning myself, be very careful. We did this with Favre. We do it with Kobe. These guys don't give it to you every night or every moment. But the ones especially that took care of themselves, they can still bring it. LeBron's performance in Game 6 against Golden State, he was the
14
best player
shots.
on the floor.
14 shots,
was
30 points. And
he's so smart.
Just bullying everybody to the rim, beating people off the dribble. It was unbelievable. And that's the unique thing about this Laker team is they have what might be the best player in the world in Anthony Davis. And then another guy who in any one game sample can be the best player on the floor. Like he was the best player on the floor in a game that had Anthony Davis and Steph Curry in it. And he's 1,000,000 years old. Like it's remarkable to me. The Boston series is an interesting matchup because Robert Williams, I don't think would be as valuable in that series because I think the Celtics would try to space out Anthony Davis with their 5-out groups with Al Horford on the perimeter. However, but one of Boston's biggest weaknesses, in my opinion, is they are very, very much analytically focused. They want layups and threes and layups and threes. That, I think, plays directly into Darvin Ham's coaching style, which is we want to chase you off the line and funnel you to Anthony Davis. And so, especially if Al Horford had extended stretches of this series where he lost control of his shot. Like there was, I think, in game 6, he was like 0 for 7 from 3 at one point. Like I think Darvin Ham has some punches that he can throw against Boston to try to play them into their worst tendencies. But we have not seen a team yet that can truly and effectively pull Anthony Davis away from the basket. Boston has the tools necessary to do so. So it's another styles make fights kind of thing. And while Tatum and Brown are jacking up threes and driving into the basket, you're going to have Anthony Davis and LeBron trying to punish them in the post. And they're going to have size mismatches all over the floor. The guard play is going to be super interesting. That would definitely be a very entertaining series. But I tell you, the Lakers are going to have their hands full with the Nuggets. I have a lot of respect for that team.
Well, they know what they are. Their star knows what he is. There's absolute clarity on what they do and don't do. My concern is I don't trust Michael Porter in a big game. I just don't. So I know Jamal Murray's good. I trust Jokic in a big game. Jamal Murray, I mostly trust. But Anthony Davis, if it went to a game 6 or 7, AD and LeBron are showing up. It's interesting about the Lakers. I view them as sort of an older, low-ceiling team, but AD actually, for his age, is still in his prime. Austin Reeves going into it. D'Lo absolutely in it. Vanderbilt athletically in it. Rui in it. You look at them and you just immediately, this is my bias. Oh, LeBron's old, they're old. But they actually, both Denver and the Lakers, a majority of their players, whether we love them or not, it's a lot of guys in their prime athletically. LeBron obviously isn't. But if you look at Anthony Davis in this stretch, you can't tell me he's out of his prime. He's in his prime. I mean, there's never been a player this good in the playoffs that was maybe except LeBron, that Anthony's problems offensively a lot of times are, I thought some of it was Golden State putting different people on him. It wasn't all that Anthony was bad. I mean, they did throw every look in the world conceivably at him, and very few players, Jason, are great. Tatum's a great example. He was crap for 3 quarters the other night in that game. Like, how many players in the history of the league are great every single game offensively? I remember a Utah
prime LeBron,
Bulls
and
series.
that's end of list.
Yeah, I remember. I mean, Kobe had a game 7 that Meta World Peace won that he was terrible. Remember the one in LA? It was terrible. Yeah. By the way, it is LeBron because I watched the Utah Jazz Michael Jordan Bull final. Michael, I swear to God, had like a 10 for a 33. Utah gave him problems. I watched them have games against the Sonics where Michael was just closeout games, wasn't good. Like, LeBron has screwed it all up. We just think, 12 years, no bad games. I remember when Dan Gilbert at once, they were mad when he left Cleveland. They pointed to a game against like the Celtics and said he quit. And it was like 28, 13, and 9. I'm like, when that's your quit game. I mean, I think it's one of those things where LeBron changed how LeBron's putting pressure on Tatum. We now think that all these great players are always great in big games. And it's like, no, Michael wasn't. Barkley wasn't. KD wasn't. Steph isn't. We've come to that conclusion. I think you're right. LeBron's the only one in my lifetime. You know, another one, not Magic Johnson, got called Tragic Johnson, right? After a series against Kareem was pretty damn good. You couldn't stop his shot. Kareem had very few bad games in his prime.
Yeah, to me, it's the unique thing that sets LeBron apart. He's not reliant on shot variance. So if his jumper's not falling, he's still going to finish 8 or 9 times in the paint, and he's going to create 9 or 10 assists, kicking out to three-point shooters, play elite defense, and be able to dominate the flow of the game. And that's what sets him apart. Colin, I wanted to ask you, I have a theory for what direction the Warriors should go. But before I hit that, I wanted to see where your head's at. If you were GM of the Warriors, like, what do you, and we do have this report from Shams, they're probably going to keep Clay, probably going to keep Andrew and Draymond. It looks like the young guys, namely Kuminga and Poole, will be the guys they look to shop. So in your opinion, what kind of player would you be targeting with those players in a trade?
Okay, so I read the Anthony Slater piece at The Athletic this morning. And so I agree that I would keep, so the story laid it out as you did. They're going to keep Clay. I would try to get him at a reduced rate. I would not pay him. I would just go to him and say, do you want to be part of this or not? But I wouldn't have a problem with Draymond. I still think Draymond's an elite defender. He's an offensive catalyst, a screen setter, IQ on the floor. He's always been hot and cold offensively. I would keep Steph. I would really try to keep Wiggins. I think there's some role players. I would keep Kuminga. I like Moody, although he's limited. I like Moody. Gary Payton, I like. And I would try to get Clay at a much reduced role. So the two players I have questions about are Jordan Poole, who drives me crazy, but Steph misses stretches. And when he does, you can't become reliant on Clay. So Poole is way more valuable than I want to acknowledge because he drives me crazy. I think his issue, Jason, is because he backs up Steph, that when he comes on the floor, he feels he has to be spectacular. The last two games in this series, I think we talked about this. He took some mid-range shots. When you play behind Steph and the crowd's all worked up and he goes off the floor, it's like mid-range jumper? What? This is so I think Steph is an ally, but can get in Jordan Poole's head. I think it's hard to play behind Steph. It really is hard. Whereas everybody knew physically, nobody was LeBron. Nobody thought, I'm going to do LeBron. Steph's small, slight. You can shoot 2 threes. And I think Poole sometimes thinks, I'm going to do, and it's like, no, dude, just do your thing. So I think Poole's more valuable than I want to say he is. Here's my concern. I think I'd move Looney. Here's why. Because I think one of the things the Lakers figured out very quickly, and they knew this going in, is he's just no offensive threat. So you have to have Draymond on the floor defensively, so you have to take Looney off the floor. And we know it's a wing league now, right? It's a shooter's league. But because he's become such a profound rebounder, he's got value on the market. I think the next step for them is becoming less reliant on their backcourt scoring. They've got to have 17, 18 points. I don't think Karl Anthony Towns fits. He's too squirrely. But I do think if you went to Minnesota and said, hey, it doesn't work there, you guys could use Jordan Poole, because Ant can sometimes be a reluctant perimeter shooter. He doesn't play defense. Ant can. That's an interesting fit. Mike Conley's a grown-up. Poole's a little immature. Ant is a physical specimen who can sometimes lose confidence in his shot. Poole never does. In a weird way, he kind of works with Minnesota. He really, in my opinion, you could disagree, but it's like he is what they aren't, and what he isn't, they are. And Karl Anthony Towns, although he's squirrely, can give you a 22-point threat every night. And again, I'm not saying he's the right one. I don't think you need 28 there, but you got to be a threat. You've got to make Anthony Davis, if you meet, or Jokic, you have to make them stay up at night and think, I got to bring it on both ends. It's like Anthony Davis can take plays off. That's my take, is that I would try to move. You maybe have to move Dante DiVincenzo. You got to move Gary Payton. You got to move 2 draft picks. You got to move Looney. I would try to get some scoring. That's what I would try to do from the. Am I wrong on that? Maybe. And if I am, tell me.
The big one you hit on that I very much agree with is you can't just rely on backcourt scoring anymore. As a matter of fact, you actually specifically said smaller role for Klay Thompson. I think it's time to have that meeting with Klay where you sit down with him and you're like, hey, we're in a different phase now. Like, it's time for you to evolve into a little bit more of a supporting role. And it's kind of ironic because he had a pretty damn good regular season in terms of half court shot creation.
Oh, he did.
But it like, I saw people tweeting before Game 6, like, oh, Game 6 Klay. And I'm like, there were a lot of things I didn't know about Game 6. I was 100% certain that Klay wasn't going to play well. He wasn't getting great looks. His legs were clearly cooked. Like, I thought, I said this in my Game 6 preview, and I think it was a missed opportunity. I think they should have been leaning way more on Andrew Wiggins to look to score throughout that series. He was getting much better matchups against these Laker guards. He was cooking them in Game 5 at home. He scored on D'Angelo Russell. Yeah. Oh.
He was better than I thought in the Sacramento series, considering his hiatus. He was worse against the Lakers. He didn't show up for 3-4 games.
Yeah, and that's the thing is, like, I thought they leaned way too heavily on Klay when there were better options out there. I would look at it like this. Like, the Jordan Poole problem is that the vast majority of young guards don't know how to play winning basketball. That's just the vast majority of them don't actually learn how to contribute in a winning context until they're in their late 20s, right? And so Jordan's just, and you've talked about this a lot on your show, Jordan deserves to go somewhere where he can be the starting point guard and in a lower pressure situation, learn how to play the game. And more importantly, he's your best vehicle with which to bring back that diversity of shot creation. So if you're relying way too heavily on backcourt shot creation, you need some sort of rim pressuring forward that you can consistently dump the ball down into the post or attack mismatches with, basically a better version of Andrew Wiggins. I don't know if that's a guy like OG Anunoby that you try to get from somewhere like Toronto, or Karl Towns is an interesting example. The one thing that freaks me out with Karl Towns is he has a tendency to be like, oh, I'm just going to float around the perimeter today. And that kind of can be a bit of an issue, especially for the problem we're trying to address here, you know? And then with the Looney thing, and this is the last thing I'll say about it, like it's time for the Warriors to have what they wanted James Wiseman to be, but that he was never going to be that young, which is a true vertical threat underneath the basket for contested rebound situations, brim protection, and lob threat situations and pick and roll. It's time for them to have a 6'11" dude who can jump on the roster. It's time.
By the way, let me throw out the Knicks. They could sure use Andrew Wiggins.
Oh, yeah.
And by the way,
that's a great example. What about Julius Randle as a rim pressuring forward for the Warriors? You know,
could you get Mitchell? Do you like Mitchell Robinson, although he's not much of an offensive?
I like Mitchell Robinson a lot. He's actually a perfect example of a backup center that I'd love to have behind Draymond Green.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, Julius Randle plays his ass off. He's a real defender. Excellent effort guy. And on the Warriors, he would be the 3rd to 4th scoring option. That's perfect for Julius Randle. Honestly, you know, it's so funny about this league. It's so much about fit. I mean, LeBron handpicked AD. And one of the reasons why is I've always felt this with LeBron. It's kind of a sneaky LeBron thing. He doesn't want to be by the basket because if he's by the basket defensively, he can't get the ball in the outlet and fly down the floor. He has to go 96. LeBron's way better at the free throw line and off to the races. So he's always loved a big that will do a little bit of the dirty work down low, just length. He doesn't have to be, because LeBron could block a lot more shots. He could be a much more, But LeBron wants the ball tipped. LeBron gets it at the free throw line, and then 6'9", 250. The other night he came down on the break and he looked left and went right, and I'm like, my God, he's a freight train. Like everybody's just he's parts the seas. But I do think that's, to me, I don't know if Randall's the piece, but like I look at
his IQ concerns me. His basketball IQ, him being a little bit of a ball stopper, that might drive Steve Kerr insane.
Yeah, but I mean, the Knicks need a real score. I wouldn't want to give Wiggins up. I think, and you watch this league as closely as anybody I know. I don't need 26 and 9 in the post. I need 16. I just need something. Like, it's just the other day, Looney hit a mid-range. He hit like a 13-footer, and I literally was like, holy hell, I've never even, I mean, it was just like, I was with like 4 guys that were like, have you ever seen him do that before? Like, he's not even a threat. And I think if you want to get through Jokic and Anthony Davis, and it's like, you got to be a threat. You can't have all your scoring in the back court.